Iran is developing weapons because they need to, right? They need to continue to advance their weapons because truthfully, their ballistic missile program sucks. When we look at like their targeting rate and things of that nature, even though they might have struck an airfield their first go round, that airfield was back up and running the very next day. You also stated that for some reason, Israel wanted it to end. That's factually incorrect to the best of my knowledge because Donald Trump actually had to call Israel and turn some of their planes around because they wanted to continue to bomb Iran following Fordo being taken out. So there's that. Last, if we're going to look and say that, Russia has got a right to self-defense because Ukraine wants to join NATO, then I think the same rule here would apply when you have the IRGC funding forces such as Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis or Ansarullah who are constantly attacking Israel. And then you also have Iran that's constantly screaming death to Israel, calls it the little Satan and wants to wipe it off the map. Now, while they might be a signatory to the NPT, they sure didn't abide by it. Right? The IAEA reports that you're referencing, they actually came out and stated that in two separate locations south of Tehran, they discovered two different sites that, Iran didn't declare where they were developing or enriching uranium. And they found particles upwards of 87.5%. That's in those same IAEA reports that you referenced. So if they're abiding by the NPT, and they were taking a look at all of that crap, then why wouldn't they declare those two different sites? And how do you account for that 87+% enriched uranium? And how do you account for the 60+% enriched uranium as well? There's no need for them to do that. There's absolutely no need. And even if you were to quote the very minute medical circumstances where you would need it, you don't need 900+ pounds of the crap. You just don't. So then I would ask, what's the purpose of all of that?
Quick question as well, Matt, before
let me answer that.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I'm not an Iranian spokesperson, so I'll just let Professor Morandi, who you've interviewed, Mario, answer, because I asked him the same question. Matt, I said, why the hell do you have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need it. 20% is the max you need because 20% allows you to create fuel plates for the Tehran research reactor. Why do you need 60%? And he said, because we need to be a threshold nuclear power. And I said, you're basically waving a red flag at the bull at this point. I know Article 4 allows you to do that, but when you enrich uranium to 60%, you raise questions in the mind of people saying, why do you do that? So you and I are actually on the same page here where I said, why the hell would you do that? But then what you're ignoring is Israel's nuclear program. You're ignoring the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons in total violation of the non-proliferation policies of the United States, of the IAEA, of everybody. But everybody seems to gloss over that Israel has nuclear weapons. And, just a little short history lesson. The last time I checked, Hezbollah was created because Israel had invaded and occupied southern Lebanon. Hezbollah is a resistance organization resisting against Israeli occupation of Lebanon. The Houthi attacked Israel only after Israel started committing genocide against Hamas, and the Houthi acted in concurrence with Article 2 of the Geneva Convention, where genocide has been found to be taking place. There's a duty to react, to respond, and the Houthi are living up to this duty. Israel, isn't innocent in this. Israel is, guilty of massive war crimes against Hamas. You ignore the Nakba. You talk about, Hamas, but you ignore the point of origin of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
I thought we were talking about Iran right now, and we'd agree.
Well, you brought up
we weren't going to bring up genocide, and then you just throw genocide out there. So
on the we'll not go into Gaza yet. If we'll have time, I will do it another day. But just on the last point you said, Scott, Matt, I'm sure you disagree that in terms of Hezbollah not being an Israeli proxy. Just actually, Matt, on your point there, if Hezbollah was not created by Iran, but can't it become an Iranian proxy over time? So if it was created because of the Israeli invasion of Lebanon, but over time it became an Iranian proxy because of all the support, military and financial support that Iran provided Hezbollah. Do you believe that Hezbollah is, I won't use the word proxy, I'll go, Scott and then Matt. I won't use the word proxy, Scott, but would you say it's heavily influenced by Iran? And I always said that the former leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was always in a difficult spot because he had to balance Lebanon's interests and Iran's interests, and Iran was funding him financially and militarily. I want to get your thoughts on this, Scott.
There's no doubt about it. Hezbollah couldn't be the organization it is today without Iranian support, political, economic, and military.
So, would you consider though, as a Hezbollah attack on Israel, an attack by Iran on Israel through Hezbollah, and same as the Houthis?
No, I think Hezbollah has shown throughout its history the ability to operate independent, that Hezbollah has its own vested interests. I believe that Hezbollah was a loaded gun aimed at the Israeli head, so that if Israel ever did attack Iran, Hezbollah would come to the assistance of Iran. But I believe, for instance, we know the 2006 war was started because of independent Hezbollah actions taken without consultation with Iran.
Matt, I'll let you respond to this. And also another question I'll add to it, Matt, is why do you think Hezbollah did not get involved in that 12-day war? And what do you make of Hezbollah today after what happened in Syria with the Assad government and what happened in Iran?
Well, I kind of want to counter and go back and forth, but all of these different things that we're going to talk about, they would end up going into like intelligence talking points. And I don't think either of us are going to agree on intelligence talking points. Would you agree with that, Scott? So if I bring up and talk about intel and all of that, you're going to cite this, and we're just going to go back and forth. I agree that what you stated, which was, how they came about could be completely and totally different than where it's at today. And again, that goes back into intelligence talking points, right? With what their motivations and where they're sitting at today. They have kind of came around inside of southern Lebanon, and they have turned over. I think I just checked the stats this morning, about 80% of the territory, and it's like south of Litani, I think over in Tyre, they had like a truckload of weapons and stuff that ended up getting delivered, but they're still not willing to turn over specific amounts of territory. When we look at it though, and I say, okay, what can I look at it from an unbiased standpoint of it just common sense facts? When I have Ansarullah from Yemen, and I have Hezbollah, and I have Hamas on 3 separate regions who shouldn't have that type of different communication, and I see them launching coordinated attacks against Israel, and the only common denominator really between the 3 of them, other than religious ideology, can connect them all the way back over into Iran with who's funding them, then I have to ask the question, okay, is that actually what's happening? Is Iran the one that's actually orchestrating this entire thing? And I do believe it's so. We have Ansarullah that was actually found, and I believe killed over inside of Iraq. Wasn't prepared to talk on this one. Earlier this year, working alongside like the IRGC, alongside of some IRGC funded militias that were over inside of Iraq. So I look at things like that and I say, is Iran likely pulling the strings behind some of this? Absolutely. I do believe that to be the case.
I'm not even going to disagree. Is Iran? Hell yeah. I mean, Iran's in a regional conflict with not just Israel, but the United States. I'm not saying I support what Iran's doing, but we're talking factually. And there can be no doubt that the IRGC, the Quds Force, has connectivity with Ansarullah, has connectivity with Hezbollah, and has connectivity with Hamas. They have connectivity with militias in Syria and Iraq as well, because they view Israel and the United States and their European allies to be an existential threat. So yeah, I mean, that's just the way that's the way the cookie crumbles when you are in a conflict. We are in a conflict. We are on the side of Israel in a conflict against Iran and its proxy forces.
Yeah, and Mario, I think you also mentioned Syria as well, like asked me about Syria with Hezbollah. And obviously, they were fighting on the side of the Assad regime. And I look at that and I say, okay, well, how do I feel about this particular situation? Because I also believe that al-Jawlani is a al-Qaeda terrorist that's just slightly deformed and threw on a suit and tie, right? I think that's the general speaking narrative, but I don't think you fight for something for that long and are willing to die for it and commit so many people to die for that reason without holding it deep within your soul. He's also friends with al-Baghdadi, right? And so when I look at these things and I go, okay, Hezbollah may have been fighting on the side of al-Assad. There is going to be some good in there. And I look at that and I say, both of these people, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not okay with. I don't agree with their ideology, reasons they're fighting, so on and so forth. So I don't think you have to pick a side when it comes to that matter and say, yes, Hezbollah is doing the right thing inside of Syria, but maybe over inside of Lebanon, maybe not so much. I don't agree with. I just look at that as 2 different parties, like 2 enemies of mine that are fighting that I don't agree with. And it just kind of remains that way.
Yeah, look, I had a whole discussion with Scott Horton a few days ago, understanding the history of Middle Eastern politics since the 1950s. We're going to finish it in like an hour and a half. We're going to do another 2-hour sit down. It is immensely complex and sad to see the situation in the region. Talking about the region, one country that suffered significantly is Lebanon. And that's a big focus right now. So we have the Israeli prime minister. So what happened recently is the Lebanese government voted for Hezbollah to disarm. So that's a decision by the Lebanese government. Hezbollah said no, but then they seem to show some road towards an agreement. Say, hey, look, if Israel takes some steps in terms of pulling out of the Lebanese territory, then we may disarm, or at least we could discuss disarming. And the Israeli prime minister responded yesterday, said the following: if the Lebanese armed forces take the necessary steps to implement the disarmament of Hezbollah, Israel will engage in reciprocal measures, including a phased reduction of IDF presence in coordination with the US-led security mechanism. Israel stands, so I'll read out the second quote afterwards, but just on that part, is that showing hope for Lebanon? Because I feel like Lebanon's in the middle of it all. He's got Iranian influence through Hezbollah. He's got Israel on the border and just had a few wars in the last 2 decades with Israel. He's got a lot of, Syrians inside of Lebanon, a lot of influence from Syria, at least under the Assad regime. So when I see progress in Lebanon, I see it as hope for the rest of the region. Scott, what do you think of these statements from the Israeli Prime Minister? And do you think there is hope for Hezbollah to disarm? And what does that mean for Lebanon?
Well, we have to parse out what phased withdrawal, what does that mean? Is Israel willing to get out of Lebanon in totality? Is Israel willing to leave the Sheba Valley or Sheba Farms, which has been a point of contention? Israel doesn't believe it to be part of Lebanon. They consider it to be part of Syria. Hezbollah doesn't respect that. It's a sticking point. I don't know if Netanyahu could be trusted at this point in time. What is his ultimate objective, goals and objectives? But I'll put it this way. The fact that people are talking is better than people shooting. They've been talking in Lebanon for a long time. There's been many agreements that have come and gone, and none of them have reached fruition. There's been many conflicts that have come out of failed agreements. But as long as people are talking, we have to, put our weight behind this, because hot air coming out of the mouths of old men is a lot better than hot gas coming out of the rifles held by young men. So,
and do you think Hezbollah should disarm, Scott? Do you think it's in Lebanon's best interest if they do?
I think it's
you got some Lebanese that say if they disarm, if you destroy those weapons, which is what the agreement is, then that weakens Lebanon and allows Israel to take over more territory. That's a concern some Lebanese have. Others believe that Hezbollah disarming allows the country to flourish. You can't have a military within another military other than the official.
Yeah, I don't believe Lebanon can succeed as a nation state with 2 armed forces. I think there's the Lebanese armed forces, and I think those should be the forces that protect the territory of Lebanon. However, historically, Israel has been disrespectful of the sovereignty of Lebanon, and it was Hezbollah and Hezbollah's resistance that drove Israel out of southern Lebanon. And so until which time Israel can evacuate Lebanon and provide assurances that they're not going to exploit the disarming of Hezbollah by re-engaging, Hezbollah will be a reality. But do I believe Hezbollah should disarm? Yes, absolutely, because I don't believe that you can be a sovereign nation with with a large functioning army. In many ways, Hezbollah is as powerful or more powerful
stronger and more powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't speak of the sovereignty of Lebanon when you have a force like Hezbollah operating, but you can't speak of the sovereignty of Lebanon when Israel is flying aircraft over Lebanese territory without any regard, when Israel occupies significant swaths, when Israel threatens Lebanon repeatedly. It's a two-way street. If you want Hezbollah to disarm, then Israel has to be willing to create conditions conducive to that disarmament.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, the ceasefire agreement that was kind of struck out last November had to lean heavily on UN Resolution 1701, which included Hezbollah moving north of the Litani River. To this day, they still haven't done that. As far as where Israel's currently at inside southern Lebanon, because Hezbollah did not withdraw and go north of the Litani River like they said they were going to, you have 5 hilltops that are being occupied over on the blue line in southern Lebanon. That's it. You don't have a massive invasion by the Israeli forces or anything like that. And I think it's beyond a fact that Hezbollah, one, had tunnel systems and obviously had plenty of rockets and everything else that were aimed over Israel down inside of that territory. There's also been numerous attempts that are just on video of Hezbollah forces that have attempted to cross the border in the past and done several other things. And Israel does have a right in order to defend its borders from those attacks to keep their civilians from getting killed. And so when they look at that and they look at that area, they're in those little areas. Now, if Hezbollah ended up owning up and coming out and withdrawing that remaining 20%, like I said, they showed some good faith by moving some out. So maybe a good in between, because like you asked, Mario, is this a sign of things moving forward? I think so. I think the U.S. pledged billions of dollars. I forget the actual number, but the U.S. ambassador to Turkey was over inside Lebanon recently. I think it was actually today, if my memory serves me correct, and was talking about things of this nature. So the U.S. has pledged a buttload of money down to southern Lebanon to help them rebuild, and a political situation is definitely there. I think if we do have, and that is confirmed, that those numbers are 80% Hezbollah withdrawn from those southern regions, and that's confirmed, I don't think it's wrong to have a phased withdrawal of Israel from those 5 different hilltops contingent on where Hezbollah is at, and you just slowly start moving in that direction, because neither of these two sides are going to trust each other. Hezbollah is not going to trust Israel, and Israel is not going to trust Hezbollah. And that's where that international community comes in place. So yeah, make that happen, have those people on the ground that are verifying that that's happening, and slowly phase that back. Get that money in there to help those civilians that were affected, that were on the ground inside southern Lebanon, to help their lives out. And you're going to see something. And, you know, I think Scott and I both agree on this, that you can't have two different armed factions taking place inside of Lebanon. You got to have one or the other. And Lebanese armed forces are the ones that are over there doing it. And the government of Lebanon has, you know, vowed to do these things. So I think that there is hope for the future there.
Scott, but doesn't that show Iran weakening? Just factually speaking, you got Hezbollah disarming, and it severely weakened after the war, and I'm not sure if you agree or not. I think you would agree with that. You've got the Assad regime being overthrown. The Yemen, the Houthis don't have much military